This program is rated 14 plus and contains scenes of violence and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
He wouldn't sleep for nights and he was just walking around the room, just crying and saying like, what I can offer my son now, what I can offer you now, or how are we gonna make it?
This is the back entrance that they walked in, and that's when I first heard the first shot. As I was standing here, I heard, I swear to my mother's grave, I will pay you back. Please calm down, put that down.
I was out for a walk and somebody texted me the news that there had been a shooting at Mallard Road. And as soon as I saw that there had been a shooting at Mallard Road, I knew exactly what had happened.
Most people think it's a victimless crime.
There's no blood on the sidewalk.
There's no blood on the sidewalk. It's not sexy.
There's no police tape around the crime scene.
Exactly, until there is.
Because of these 4 people, my life has changed forever.
Good evening and welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. When heading to work in the morning or dropping the kids off at school, the last thing on one's mind is someone showing up with a gun. But that sense of security was shattered for one Toronto community in June of 2024. Here now is Sean O'Shea with deadly retribution.
June 17th.
Yeah.
How did that day start for you?
There were tons that I was shooting that day. I'm sitting there in my office and I hear a big bang. And the bang was so loud and it was, I mean, it's unbelievable, but I felt the wave hitting my face. You know, it was that sort of bang. Got up from my chair and went to the door by the corridor, and then I heard, you know, shouting and quarrel and, you know.
How many voices in that argument do you recall?
One. I was hearing one shouting. So I thought, oh, okay, it's none of my business. I went back to my seat behind my desk, you know, continue my work. Didn't come to my mind that that was a gunshot.
We have breaking news to lead us off tonight with Toronto police after a shooting in Don Mills. That's right. Police were called to Don Mills Road and Mallard Road at around 3:25 p.m. Now that is located between Lawrence Avenue and York Mills Road. There are 2 schools and a daycare nearby. Let's go live now to our Sean O'Shea, who is at the scene for us.
Yes, we're at a daycare and there are 2 schools. There's Northmount Middle School, there's Westfield Secondary School, and of course St. George Mini School and Infant Care. And it's those little kids who were in lockdown. Anxious parents were outside waiting to be reunited with those children, not sure whether they were okay.
They're taking our name down and then they're evacuating the daycares first.
Okay. We're just waiting for them to bring our kids outside, and that's all we know. We don't know what happened.
Pretty emotional here. These are the little kids coming back out. You know, these parents have been waiting for some time to find out if their kids were okay. Lots of tears, lots of hugs, lots of hope that everything was going to be okay, because witnesses had heard about those shots fired. They knew something had gone wrong, and they just didn't know who was safe and who was hurt. And according to a witness, there was some kind of a disagreement which resulted in a series of shots.
I heard the shots first. Then I came out, quarreled. Then I went back to my seat. 2 minutes later, another shot.
How many shots did you hear?
At the beginning, 2. And when I came out and when it all ended, 5, 6, I think.
Can you tell us anything about the argument that you overheard?
I have no idea. I got no idea what it was all about. And I was too afraid, to be honest with you, too afraid to go forward and see what's going on, because the guy had a gun.
Have you ever heard fighting in that office before?
No. No.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here to speak with you this evening about a call for service that the Toronto Police Service received at a commercial premises located just behind me. At approximately 3:25 p.m., we received a call for service in relation to sound of gunshots. Officers attended quite quickly. They entered the premises where they located 3 individuals I'm not going to be identifying the individuals any further other than to say they're 3 adults, 2 males, and 1 female. We're still in the process of notifying next of kin.
What kind of weapon or how many shots were fired?
It's early for me to say how many shots were fired, and I don't really want to speculate on the weapon. It's obviously a firearm was discharged.
You talked about 2 men and a woman. Is the gender of the shooter female or male?
It's male. It's my understanding early on that perhaps this is there's some sort of financial transaction, businesses that are being facilitated here, but it's early on in the investigation, and I can't say for sure.
Welcome back to Crime Beat. On June 17th, 2024, Sharak Biniaz was working in his photography studio down the hall from his friend Arash Misagi and Misagi's employee Samira Yousefi, when suddenly Biniaz says he heard an argument and then gunshots. We now return to Sean O'Shea with deadly retribution.
It's a significant space.
It's a very big space. This is the first time back.
This is the door you would come in?
Yeah, we would come in and go out.
So this is the room which was your studio?
That's correct, yeah.
And all that's left is your furniture?
Right. I mean, I'm thinking of it every day, but being back here, all the scenes is right in front of my eyes right now. It was an investment company, a friend of mine who knew Arash, and he introduced me to him. I started working for him as a graphic designer doing their food labels and things like that. And one day he called me, he said, look, I'm in 25 Mallard, and do you want to come and work with me? I had a big photography and videography studio. Arash was kind enough to let me use that space without charging me anything. Very nice guy.
Fair to say you hit it off? You got along?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever feel unsafe in the building for any reason?
No.
He wasn't the only person in that office that you knew?
No, it was him and Samira. I didn't talk to her much, but whenever we did, it was pleasant, yeah. She was just a mortgage broker.
Did you get a sense that there were angry people on the other end of the phone?
No, just normal. It was strange that the doors were always closed.
Was that a bit unusual?
It was, yeah. It was, but again, I didn't think much of it. So 2 months prior to the incident, I had bought a drone. You know, I thought best place to practice it, you know, with a joystick and all that, would be in my office building. So this is the area, this is the entrance, the back entrance that they walked in, and the back door which they entered is here. Arash sort of opened the door. I think he was waiting for him in the parking lot, and then as soon as he sees Arash, he pushed him in, and then he fired 1 shot. And that's when I first heard the first shot, which was very loud. Samira heard the shot as well. She walks out. He directs both of them towards this corridor. Through this corridor towards the reception, the main entrance of the company. And then I heard another bang, but this time the bang was not as loud as the first one. And then from after that, I heard the scream, Samira's screaming. Just scream, and she was, her voice was really, you know, scared. So after the second shot, which I heard Samira screaming, and that's when I came out of my office, through the corridor, stood there, and that's where I heard Arash pleading, saying that, I swear to my mum's grave that I will pay you back, just calm down, put that down. And that's when I realized it was a gunshot.
You can't see around the corner.
Exactly.
But you can hear better.
The shooter said, how are you going to pay me back? And that's when Samira said, I will sell my house, just calm down, put that down.
She was afraid.
Oh yeah. So was Arash. Arash's voice was really afraid. That was the last things I heard, and I slowly just walked out of the back door. And I was about here when I called 911. So I called 911, and she said, okay, sir, just stay calm, and someone will be there shortly. I saw a police officer coming from Don Mills to Mallard, and then I just walked and started waving at him. Then I started walking him through the back door there, and he walked in, and he didn't even pull out his gun, you know. And I said, he's armed, you need backup. I heard shooting. He said, backup is coming, don't worry. And then 2 other police cars, or 3, came. And I was here when the officers walked out of the car. I walked towards the officer and handed them my key, and I said, there's been a shooting and there's an officer inside. That's when the shooting started. And when the shots came, I was standing there, and that's where, when I heard the first officer shouting, it's police, come out, it's police, come out. But there was no word, and then he came and opened this door, and the other police officers walked in, and I said, how are my friends, how are my friends? And then they started putting the yellow tape. I was scared. I didn't want to believe it.
3 dead. Police have confirmed that, and sources are telling us that police are investigating this as a murder-suicide. So what we're waiting on now here at the scene is information from the police, more details, as this just investigation is just actually beginning.
As I've indicated, the premises behind me was being operated as a business premises, and it's our belief at this point that the altercation that took place in there was in relation to that business.
My husband is a very happy person that I met 9 years ago. It was we in love from the first moment, from first date. The energy, the love he can give, the way how his favorite bracelets, he always wear them. I love all of these pictures. This picture means a lot for me. I miss him a lot every day.
When you woke up on June the 17th, did you have any sense of what was going to happen that day?
No. He woke up early, like usually, like 6 a.m. He continued his preparation for work. I continue my routine with kids. He hugged me and he was shaking. I told him, why are you shaking? You want I come with you to work? He said, no, it's a small job. I'm gonna finish it fast. I'm gonna come back before 3 p.m. And he was like very strict. He doesn't want me to come with him. He told me that he's sorry, but he usually every day say that he's sorry. And he said he's sorry and he loves me.
When did you find out what had happened that day, and how did you find out?
I got a call from his father, and there was policeman that spoke with me. And first thing he asked if I have firearm at home, and then it scared me. Police told me that he took his own life, and that's all.
They didn't tell you any of the circumstances?
No.
Did you find a suicide note?
I did. It's a very small note. So note says, my death is on hands of Samira Yosef, Arash Masagi, Shahrail Mazaheri, Frederick Yak. Stop these criminals from destroying people's lives. because of these 4 people, my life it changed forever.
And those other 2 names are the names of the 2 lawyers who were involved?
Yes.
Welcome back. Elisa Pogorelowski has just learned that her husband, Alan Katz, instead of going to work, went and killed 2 people. In his suicide note, he named 4 individuals: the shooting victims, Arash Masagi, Samira Yousefi, and 2 lawyers. Here again is Sean O'Shea with deadly retribution.
I'm Sean O'Shea with Global News. How are you? I'm trying to reach Mr. Missouri, please.
He's on vacation until July 2nd.
Really? We attempted to speak with Shahryar Mazahari shortly after the shooting in June. We're following up on the shooting death, and we're following up on the litigation involving the lawyer. He didn't respond to us then, and when we put out word again that we hoped to speak with him for this program, he declined our request. And when we put out the word again, as for the other lawyer named in the suicide note, Frederick Yak, his lawyer told us, quote, "Unfortunately, because these matters are before the court, my client politely declines your request for an interview or comment." Both lawyers denied any knowledge of the alleged schemes and any wrongdoing. They also denied offering the couple legal advice.
My name is Peter Smiley, and I have been litigating against Mr. Masagi and his associates for going on 7 years, I would say. I was out for a walk, and somebody texted me the news that there had been a shooting at Mallard Road. And as soon as I saw that there had been a shooting at Mallard Road, I knew exactly what had happened.
I remember hearing on the media that there had been a shooting on Mallard Road. And immediately I said to one of my colleagues, I bet you that was Arash Masagi that was shot. I'm Brian King. We are private investigators that work on white-collar crime. Probably, 15 to 20 years ago, his name first appeared on some of our files.
While Arash Masagi was never convicted of fraud, for over 2 decades he's been in and out of court defending his business dealings.
So the real bread and butter of Masagi's fraudulent schemes was mortgage fraud.
In other words, convincing people that there is an opportunity for very high interest rate returns on investing in private lending and mortgages.
He would say, I have a borrower who owns a very valuable property. I will register a mortgage against that property, and your investment will be secured by way of a mortgage on title. And if the money doesn't get paid back, then we will sell the property, you'll get your money, you'll get a very generous rate of return.
How did you hear about this investment opportunity?
We have a close friends, and they did the same, and it worked very good with them. So I go to the bank to ask the property loan under my house, and I got the loan for the investments. They tell me that my return would be good enough to pay the loan and save the money. My husband, it was his idea from the beginning. The idea was to make money work for us.
People tend to be, I don't want to say greedy, but they tend to want to get ahead. If it's too good to be true, it's not true.
And Mr. Masagi was very good at making these quote-unquote investment opportunities seem legitimate by involving lawyers and essentially people who were willing to use their professional position to give his schemes an air of legitimacy. And a classic example of that is the mortgage broker Samira Yousefi. She was a licensed real estate agent, appears to have had a legitimate real estate practice, but somehow fell into Mr. Masagi's orbit. He would identify, say, for example, real estate lawyers who were just out of law school looking to get a start in their careers, and he would say, We have offices at Mallard Road, the site of the shooting. We will give you free rent and we will give you real estate work to do, and it will be a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Arash Masagi was reportedly born in Tehran and immigrated to Canada as a child after the Iranian Revolution. And he used those ties to his advantage.
A lot of Masagi's victims were from immigrant communities like the Persian community, the Russian community.
Often these groups will prey on people new to the country too. They may have only been in the country for a few years.
You believed him?
I never had experience of people like that, of investments like that.
In the beginning, everything was good.
Yeah. In first 4 months.
Now, this was also happening at a time where the real estate market in Toronto is skyrocketing. There's a perception that real estate is the ultimate investment.
One day he just stopped answering the calls. That's all.
And then what happened to this money that was supposed to be coming in?
It didn't come in.
And your husband is calling, trying to get answers. He's emailing.
Tomorrow, day after tomorrow.
So what do you guys do for a living? You do everything.
In late 2023, they got an in-person meeting with Arash Masagi, except they say he was using an alias.
So what happened is this one, Samira personally guaranteed this is the safest thing.
Alan Katz taped the conversation.
And then September, the check bounced.
And it's due on which days of the month? Is it the end of the month? On the 15th? Yeah, okay. No, don't worry, don't worry. I'll talk to her. I'll get this all straightened out. I'll talk to the borrower on each one. I'll talk to her. I'll get the bank statements, and I'll make you a full report.
He gave us so much hopes that it never happened. It's affected us a lot. It was a big stress because we have to continue pay our loan, and it's 9,000 every month. I cried every day because we couldn't stand these bills.
In January 2024, she says they went to police.
Fraud is very frustrating, and especially as a police officer, you often have to say to them, what are you seeking here? Are you looking for recovery of your funds, or are you looking for justice to be done on the person who took your money? We're in the justice business. We're not in the recovery business.
Elisa says police took down their information, but then it felt like nothing happened. Police are overwhelmed with complaints when it comes to fraud. Fair statement?
Absolutely.
Fair to say not all of it can be given the same priority?
Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. So I can tell you in 2024, Toronto Police Service, we received almost 17,000 fraud reports. I think in this case, in these cases, and in many fraud cases, many victims of fraud are let down.
Scared and confused, the couple pursued their case against Arash Masagi in civil court.
The first time I met Mr. Masagi was cross-examining him and his wife on an affidavit they'd sworn in one of the proceedings that I was counsel on. He was a physically intimidating person. He had a very intense stare. He would be very gruff. And everything that he did was to let you know that he was untouchable and he was beyond the reach of the legal system. And unfortunately, he was right.
One of the first things that someone suing Arash Masagi would find out is that years earlier, he'd entered into bankruptcy.
And once he was bankrupt and sort of immune from civil consequences, that's when his career of fraud really took off. And because Mr. Masagi was a very sophisticated business person, very familiar with our legal system, he was very good at creating these thickets of shell corporations and co-conspirators, which was very expensive to navigate and very difficult to navigate, particularly when you've just had your life savings stolen from you. Lots of people have got their money back, but they've got significantly less than they lost. If it ever looked like you were going to get him in the stand in front of a judge, bring him to trial, he would just offer you an insulting settlement. In the 20 years since he was found liable for fraud in New York. I'm not aware of any civil finding of fraud against Mr. Masagi, and I'm not aware of any criminal convictions against Mr. Masagi. And that's what he did until ultimately Mr. Katz reached the end of his rope.
Part of fraud that's different than any other offense, any other crime, is that the victim, the complainant, has taken part. You've been fooled. It's not a thief reaching into your wallet and running off with it. It's the thief convincing you to reach into your pocket and say, here's my wallet.
We stopped sleeping, eating, function. We couldn't continue. It was very hard. He wouldn't sleep for nights, and he was just walking around the room, just crying and sitting, watching the wall.
Was Alan getting angry?
Yeah, he was angry. Yeah, we was crying together. Yes, he was like saying like, what I can offer my son now, what I can offer you now, how are we gonna make it?
As I was standing here, I heard Aresh's pleading that, I swear to my mother's grave, I will pay you back. Please calm down, put that down. Then he's shouting, how are you gonna pay me? And that's when Samira said, I'll sell my house. Now, Alan stands there, sits Aresh and Samira on the sofa, and second shot was there on the wall.
You've laid out what you've reconstructed. Why do you believe that it unfolded the way that you said?
Well, after the police, which was on a Friday, said that I can go to the office and pick my stuff up, I went back to the office and I thought I'd film the incidents that had happened because it wasn't cleaned up.
This is the scene of the crime.
Yeah. So as you can see, the shooter was standing here where he shot Aresh and Samira, who were sitting on the sofa, and that's where Samira screamed. And you can see blood spatter on the wall as well. And this is the blood of Samira and Aresh. And then as he was standing there and saw the police coming, he shot both of them, 2 shots each, 4, and then a pause, and then the last one. And that's the shooter's blood when he shot himself, and that's where he fell.
Graphic.
Very graphic. I still can't believe that they're gone. Still can't believe that. Cold-blooded murder for me. That's what he was. Because they were begging for their lives.
Sitting in her living room, Elisa Pogorelowski clutches a picture with her husband, Alan Katz.
Asked for help, and nobody did nothing.
She says as a result, they lost their life savings, $1.28 million.
These people lost their life savings. They spent their entire lives saving up.
Nobody has the right to take somebody's life, but I definitely understand the reasons behind it.
Michael Ackerman is talking about his friend Alan Katz, seen here. Katz worked in construction and sometimes as a DJ. Now this widow is trying to raise money to pay for a funeral through a GoFundMe campaign, and she's selling her artwork, whatever she says it will take to provide for her 2 children and to fund a legal fight to get their money back.
There has to be a level of enforcement. I can't understand how this man kept on ripping off people for years and years.
Though Michael Ackerman says he doesn't condone what Katz did, public opinion in the form of online comments doesn't condemn Katz.
90% of them are supporting him and hailing him as a hero, and I think in a way he was a hero.
So that shooting on Monday claimed 3 lives, an act of retribution that Katz's family says was out of character for the 46-year-old father, described as humble and gentle but pushed to the edge.
I born in Moldova, and I came from Israel to Canada in 2008.
Originally from Belarus, Alan Katz had also immigrated to Canada from Israel.
I got the husband, the family, the kids. If you want to buy a house, you have to save the money. No day offs, working on weekends.
But there's a smile on your face when you talk about that because this was meaningful to you.
Yeah, because it was my life. I love my life every day of it. He was best friend, best lover, like best father, best husband. Long and happy life together. This was my dream. We put everything in the house.
Did you know anything about there being a gun?
No, I don't. I didn't. He finished military in Israel. I finished military in Israel too. So we are familiar with gun.
But there's a difference between knowing what to do and the compulsory military service that you did and then having an interest in it in your own life. But that wasn't what he was like.
No. It was because what happened with Trudeau.
Today, we're announcing new legislation for stronger measures than ever before to combat gun violence in Canada.
You know, he wants to take all firearms. He wants to take it back. And we decided maybe we have to have it just in case. And it was almost 2 years before what happened. We took a train together.
And then when you do the course, you have to apply to be able to get licensed for the RCMP.
Yeah, but we never applied. But he applied secretly, that I didn't know, like 2 months before what happened, 2-3 months before.
They're supposed to call around family and friends and people.
I found out that our friends give him
reference,
right.
You didn't know anything about that?
I didn't know, I didn't know.
And then when he had the license, he was able to buy the
Yes, he got the gun and he did what he did.
You still have questions about what happened?
I have questions, yes. It's not just some gun, it's a shoot gun. It's a very heavy gun. It's very hard to kill yourself with this gun and people too. So I have to find out what happened. I tried to get the police report and they didn't give me the police report.
The widow here said that she was not briefed by the police on any of the circumstances formally about what happened, how her husband died. Is that standard practice?
I can't. I wasn't privy to the investigation at all. I can't speak to it.
Before I wasn't thinking what happened because people are dead and whatever happened, right? But now I have to find out what actually happened because they don't want to give me the police report.
They haven't released his name publicly.
I've been told we're not allowed to. I've been told that legally we can't. I don't understand it, but our legal have told us that we're not to identify him.
When we asked Toronto Police for more details, they told us, quote, "We are bound by legislation that governs our ability to disclose personal information to the public, and that permission is usually tied to a charge or conviction." They added that Elisa Pogorelowski has been advised she can obtain records through freedom of information. Do you believe that they should release his name?
Maybe they don't release it because they don't want to actually explain what happened. Maybe we still don't know something.
Welcome back. In June of 2024, 46-year-old Alan Katz walked into a Toronto office building and shot the two people he alleged stole his family's life savings in a mortgage fraud. It's then believed he took his own life. But a witness questions whether or not these 3 lives could have been saved. Now, back to Sean O'Shea with the conclusion of deadly retribution.
So this is the field of view. This is the main reception area.
So
right
that's
here.
the reception area. And as you can see, these are all mirrored. So you can't see inside, but
you can see out.
You can see outside, yeah. The second police car, the backup, when they come, 1 comes here and 2 from that side come here, and they park here and there. So what happens is he sees them, he panics, he moves towards there by the wall and then shoots them from that side. The reason I'm saying why I called 911 was a mistake, well, because from the time the first 2 shots till the last shots, it took 5-6 minutes and it was quiet. Nothing had happened until the police arrived. I heard that the police have said that I'm lying, and they were inside the car when they heard the shots, which is not possible because you must be very close to hear those shots because it's inside the building.
Do you think it would have been resolved if the police hadn't shown up?
Maybe.
According to Toronto Police, upon arrival, the first officer reported hearing several loud bangs while inside their vehicle. Officers entered 25 Mallard Road less than 2 minutes after arriving and found 3 individuals already deceased. There were no reports of gunshots after officers exited their vehicles. They also told us if gunshots had been heard while officers were standing outside the building, officers would have immediately reported the sound of gunshots, and it would have been captured on their body-worn cameras, which have audio. Toronto Police would not grant us access to the audio. You still have questions about how the police acted that day?
Yes, because now I understand that he killed himself after they arrived.
What do you think of that? The idea that he gave them a chance, and maybe had the police not shown up, or had he thought that he was not going to be in deeper trouble, he might have walked away.
Imagine you walking with the gun, shoot gun. You think if you walk with the shoot gun to office other people, you think there is any other way, than not kill them?
He was happy 2 weeks prior to this happening. Apparently, there was a case that Arash had in the US, which he had won. I heard that he was going to pay everyone off with the money that he was getting, and he was going to quit all this business.
Would you believe this person if he say, I will give you money back after 8 months? He's saying that he will give you money back, but no. We don't know if he say true or not.
He was never convicted. There was never proven that Arash had done whatever they say that he's done in the courts. His business activities, I don't know anything about that. I've heard all these things after the incident because what I knew from him was the business of the food products, which I was doing labels for him.
I can tell you why he was involved in food labeling, because another one of Mr. Masagi's classic fraudulent schemes was trademark and copyright fraud. In fact, that was at the root of the $1 million fraud judgment against him in New York.
I feel angry. I feel disgusted. I feel that they have no empathy or sympathy for their fellow human beings. Most people don't see the damages of fraud. Most people think it's a victimless crime.
There's no blood on the sidewalk.
There's no blood on the sidewalk. It's not sexy. You have his word against your word. Well, yeah, I brought them in to make investments. Well, it didn't work out.
There's no police tape around the crime scene.
Exactly. Until there is. I know that the suspect of the frauds that was charged by the Toronto Police in 2 separate major projects in the last 10, 15 years, we had reasonable grounds to believe that he was guilty of those offenses. Those investigations were massive. They were time consuming. They took years to complete.
You investigated, you laid charges, you were prepared to go to court.
That's right.
And the Crown dropped the charges, and there you are.
That's right, that's right. Those charges were dropped just on the eve of trial.
I have no insight into why the Crown did that, but I can speculate. At the end of the day, do we want to spend our limited resources prosecuting these claims where there is very little prospect of success, or do we want to focus our attention on prosecuting murderers and rapists and keeping them behind bars?
Things need to change. The police are not going to solve this problem. We cannot. We don't have the power, we don't have the authority, we don't have the resources, we don't have the means to stop fraud.
This case is so egregious because here is an individual who was able to systematically abuse the Canadian justice system for over 20 years, defraud literally hundreds of people of millions of dollars. And the bottom line is, if people can't look to the justice system to defend them from fraudsters and scammers, to protect their rights, then the kind of vigilante justice that Mr. Katz ultimately felt forced into, it's inevitable.
It's hard to determine what people are going to do when they basically lose their life savings. It's almost like an epidemic right now.
So I think a great way to illustrate exactly who Mr. Masagi was and how he perceived himself is to read some texts that he sent to a client of mine, which were ultimately put into the public record in a number of court decisions. Keep ignoring, keep hiding, pretty soon you will be running too. Stealing from a person like me is like stealing from Al Capone. I don't allow it to happen. By Tuesday, we will let the games begin. I will have no mercy after Tuesday. In his own words.
I go to Arash's grave every now and then, and I always tell him, I'm sorry I left you alone. That's what I say.
He didn't deserve to die like that.
No. No.
Nor did she.
Nor did she, no. That's the thing, you see, it's bothering me since 6 months ago. That's why did I leave them alone? Why did I leave? Why didn't I stay? Why didn't I interrupt? Why didn't I all kinds of things. What was he thinking when I left the office? Because the door has got a squeaky noise. So definitely he was able to hear. Or was it in his mind that, oh, Shahrukh is gone. There's no one else in the office, so what am I going to do with this guy? What was his thoughts when I left? That hurts as well.
The legal cases, the civil cases, they're not finished.
No, it's still in process. In this stage, I cannot talk about that.
At the time, Arash Masagi and Samir Youssefi both denied the allegations brought by the lawsuit.
We probably won't be able to get our money back because we don't have enough money to fight. I have to still somehow to live without any other support. I really appreciate the support that people give me with the GoFundMe. It's helped a lot.
Elisa hopes to one day return to making her art, that it could be a way to help her heal.
To feel love, be loved, I feel empty. Like I'm trying to work, but I can't at this point.
Are you angry with Alan at all because of what he did?
Anger, it's a big feeling. It takes too much of my power and I need to continue walking. So no anger. It won't help me to move on.
It haunts you. It rips you apart. It really does. I have 25 years as a police officer, so I have gone to many radio calls involving persons threatening violence upon themselves or upon other people. As damaging and as painful as events in their lives occur, I have to believe that they will get better, and I have to try and convince them of that. At the end of the day, the most important people in our lives are our family and our friends. We want people to be around to stay with them.
Yeah, my son still, he knows that Papa is not here, but he doesn't, it's hard time for him a lot.
Papa?
Hard because he doesn't want to play the toys he played with his father. He doesn't want to do stuff that he did with his father. I wish he never done it, yes. I wish he never done. Doesn't matter how bad is the person. It's not in your power to take life. I miss him all day, every day.
If you or someone you know is in crisis and contemplating suicide, there is help. Call or text 988 from anywhere in Canada. For this program, members of Arash Masagi's family did not wish to speak with us. We were unable to reach the family of Samira Yousefi. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.
On Sunday, she didn't answer us, and neither on Monday.
The only communication that they had seemingly from her was by text message.
When details started to appear of what had actually happened, it causes a lot of concern, a lot of fear as well.
You could surmise that she'd been strangled or that the cord had actually caused her death.
A lot of the neighbours would have been shocked, but also extremely puzzled as to how this could have happened.
We were suspicious about the lies. It's big lies, you know?
I live every day with the fact that I was friends with a murderer.
At the edge of London lies the village-like suburb of Kew.
Kew is one of the most sought-after areas of London. It's in West London.
Kew is an extremely wealthy area. It's within commuting distance of the City of London, and it's wonderful nature beside the river and the Royal Botanic Gardens.
It's very leafy. It's a very well-to-do kind of area. It's fairly low crime as well. So it's a nice area for people to live in.
There is definitely a villagey feel. We have a very small high street. You will find a lot of independent trades around Kew, which I think that's what people like.
There's a lot of artists and TV celebrities, and of course Sir David Attenborough lives there. It's a world-class site.
Kew was the perfect place for aspiring French filmmaker Laureline Garcia-Bateau to set up home in 2009.
Laureline was my best friend, my close friend. She was like a sister to me. We always be united. We always be in touch. We just developed a friendship, more than a friendship. Our children called her Auntie Lolo, and my daughter has her name. She was family.
She was a vivacious, very popular, well-liked young woman who was beautiful on the inside as well as on the outside. She was easy to like and was a very caring and considerate kind of person.
The future seemed bright for Laureline, and London was the place to help make her career ambitions come true.
She was born in Aix-en-Provence, but she came to London to pursue her dream of becoming a film producer.
Laureline had a lot of passion, but she developed a real passion for cinema. She was a passionate people. She was a determined people. She was a hard worker. She started her own production company. She got a Grammy as a production assistant on a movie with Dame Joan Collins. For us, it was nice and amazing, but I know for England was a dream, and it was a dream.
Despite a successful career, Laureline was happiest at home with her dogs.
Laureline was a dog lover. She loves animals. She had an Instagram of a video every day with her two dogs, Haley, a Husky, and Blake, a Rottweiler. Okay, so nice. They sleep on the bed, and we see that on Instagram every day. It's like they're her children for her.
And on top of her busy life in the UK, Laureline stayed in regular contact with her family in France.
Laureline was very close to her family. Oh yes, she used to call her mom every day and maybe twice a day, on the morning and the evening. So the family for Laureline is everything. Family and friends and pets was everything.
In March 2019, Laureline was due to move out of her flat in Kew into a new place. Something friends and family were eagerly waiting to hear about.
On Sunday, she didn't answer us, neither on Monday, and it was already strange.
Certainly raised alarm bells the fact that Laureline had not spoken to her best friend and her mum and her family, when she would normally speak to her mum every day and speak to her best friend very regularly as well. So the only communication that they had seemingly from her was by text message.
But there was something unusual about Laureline's texts.
Her friends had received some strange text messages from her that didn't really chime with the kind of person that they knew her to be. For example, her best friend said that she thought it was strange that she said that she was going on a shopping spree in Oxford Street because she knew that she usually shopped online and got all her clothes from online retailers. She'd described how she was looking forward to getting a boob job and liposuction. Certainly not the kind of thing that she would have said. So this kind of thing immediately raised alarms, and they were very, very concerned that she just seemed to be communicating by text message, but nobody had seen her.
Confused by Laureline's strange behaviour, her sister-in-law makes her way to the property in Kew.
And when she couldn't find her, she alerted the police.
Laureline was reported missing on the 6th of March 2019, and that means that a police officer would be dispatched to talk to her about her concerns and take a report. The missing persons inquiry started with questions to her sister-in-law and potentially any friends that could be found to say, have you seen her? Can you tell us when you last saw her? And the concern was raised because her sister-in-law had visited the address and she could hear dogs barking, Laureline's dogs, and no sign of Laureline. Laureline was a lover of dogs, so she would never leave her dogs alone. They were her children, essentially, at the time. And also, because it was now Tuesday, Laureline had failed to turn up for work, so work colleagues were now concerned. So you had a lot of people voicing their concern about where Laureline was, and that made it a concern for the police because this was completely out of character and completely unusual behaviour.
Police begin their inquiries by also visiting Laureline's address.
In a missing persons inquiry, police will attend an address, the place where the person lives, because within that premises you might find something to indicate where they've gone. It might be a ticket, it might be a receipt, it could be anything. And also you want to make sure that they haven't come to harm behind locked doors. So there would be a natural instinct for officers to get into that premises, and quite often that's by breaking in to check on the welfare of somebody, and that's what they did in this case. The officers went in, searched the premises, and she was not anywhere. But what officers could see inside that address was the boxes all still ready to be packed.
It looked as if she was just about to move out. Her belongings were all boxed up, ready as if she was about to move out of the flat straight away. So it looked like the home had been disrupted in some way.
Back at the police station, officers assess the risk of Laureline's disappearance.
A missing person is graded low, medium or high risk. And different things happen at different levels. In the low risk, you've got people who perhaps there's no particular harm that you can think, they might just have gone away, and the concern is quite a low for them. Medium risk, slightly more work is done around that because people are concerned, but it might be within their character to go away for a weekend or something like that. So it's not necessarily out of character. Whereas you have the high risk category, and that's where Laureline sat, because this was completely out of character.
After reviewing the case as high risk, police returned to Laureline's address for a more detailed search.
They went out into the garden using torches. And in the garden, they had a look around and they could see various items leaning up against a fence, so a spade, shovel, other items that you would use in general gardening, and a bag of compost as well on the right-hand fence. And one of the officers then turned attention to the flower bed on the left-hand side as you walked into the garden and noticed that it was completely brand new in one section. The CID officer moved the soil back closest to them and identified what they thought was the shape of a foot sticking out in essentially a shallow grave. And just a few more scrapes to see what was there made them believe that what they had found was indeed a body.
Police searching for missing French filmmaker Laureline Garcia-Bateau have discovered a body buried in her back garden.
As soon as you find a body in a shallow grave in a premises, it becomes a murder inquiry straight away because that person doesn't put themselves there. And that's when the process of the team start to make their own inquiries, and all the different actions that come out of that initial deployment begin in earnest.
With a murder investigation in progress, police secure the scene.
You had a lot of this area all cordoned off, a lot of crime scene tents here, because as you bring items out of the garden as well, you need to put them somewhere which is forensically sterile. And so we try to utilise the area out the back of the premises for that reason. So here really behind the house, the alleyway that we used, and trying to set up a forensic retrieval here was quite difficult because the wind was so strong that it was hard. And obviously knowing how detailed you've got to be and how, you know, to avoid any contamination because it is windy, and also you're dealing with an outside scene, it's particularly more complex than you would expect an inner scene to be.
Arrive on scene, having been called by the homicide assessment team, usually, and we'll receive a briefing from the local borough police about what the incident involves and why it may be suspicious. Once we've had a briefing, we'll be wearing protective clothing, mask, overshoes, gloves, scene suit, and entering the scene to look for to see what has occurred.
The crime scene manager is in charge of that scene forensically, whether they be physical exhibits that are taken out of a premises or whether they are swabs or fingerprints. They're in charge of running that scene.
The recovery of the body is totally down to the archaeologist, and he'll work in tandem with an anthropologist. Their speciality is bone analysis, who died, how they died and where they died. Working together, they can rapidly maximise the recording, interpretation and recovery of the body.
As the team removes several inches of soil, it becomes clear that the individual is in fact female.
Obviously, your first thought is, well, Laureline Garcia-Bateau is missing, and we have a body in the garden, and it's suspicious that she's missing. So, obviously, my thought is straight away, well, this is probably going to be Laureline. But you don't go to a family with probablys. You have to be sure.
As forensic archaeologists continue digging, the level of brutality on the victim becomes clear.
Once the body was removed from the ground, she was lying on her back, naked. She was wrapped in a mattress, and there was silver duct tape around the area of where the knees and the neck were. The mattress was then wrapped in a cord around the middle of it, but around her neck she had an electric wire. She had a head bag on, and her arms were tied behind her back with duct tape. You could surmise that she'd been strangled, or the cord had actually caused her death. You couldn't see the rest of the body to determine what else was there. She may have been stabbed, for all we knew, but that wouldn't be able to be looked at until we got to the mortuary.
As the body is taken to the mortuary to establish a cause of death and identify the victim, news of a murder spreads.
For a young woman's body to be dug up in a garden in Kew, it would have been, almost unheard of in a neighbourhood like that. A lot of the neighbours would have been shocked, but also extremely puzzled as to how this could have happened.
I haven't ever heard of a murder in Kew.
It's quite shocking to hear a murder in Kew. It's not normally the norms of anything.
When details started to appear of what had happened, people become very concerned about, something that's happening in your neighbourhood. It causes a lot of concern, a lot of fear as well.
At the mortuary, the post-mortem gets underway.
Once the body arrives for the post-mortem, he would look at both sides of the body for any bruising, any wounds, anything that stands out to him. There was no obvious bruising around the neck, but once you get the body opened up and get under the skin, then the bruising can be seen. We check in the hyoid bone, the bone under the neck, see if it's fractured, and then it results in the conclusion that death had been compression of the neck, believed via strangulation.
With a cause of death established, it isn't long before the individual is identified as none other than Loreline Garcia-Berteau.
I was in my car alone, and I just remember that it was Loreline's mother I had on phone. So I just say the word, is it her? Is she dead? And I hung up. I remember I screamed. I never screamed like that. It's taken a part of me. She was like my little sister, It's taken a part of me.
The investigation into Loreline's murder ramps up, and initial theories are considered. Could this be a burglary gone wrong?
It's a very attractive area for a burglar because there's a lot of assets there.
So if someone's forced their way into the address and killed somebody, and then that person has disappeared, we need to identify them as soon as we can. So we'll be looking to make a light source examination, any finger marks that are not seen to the naked eye. Fingerprint examination. We'll be looking for any DNA that we can find, possibly cigarette ends. Things have been moved by the suspect. He may have opened drawers, cupboards, so we'll be looking to examine those, DNA. He may have cut himself somewhere, so he may have drops of blood that he's left behind.
But a closer examination begins to cast doubts on a suspected burglary.
If it had been a burglary gone wrong, you wouldn't expect them to hang around and attempt to hide the body in the way that it had been.
Police take into consideration Loreline's plans to move home around the time of her murder.
Could the movers have been involved? Could it have been a handyman that had, come round and helped box up her belongings?
After making their inquiries, police discovered that no removal firm had attended the address. So focus switches to Loreline's personal life.
Certainly from her communication with her friends, it was suggested that when she'd last spoken to her sister-in-law, she was looking forward to going on a date with a vet that she'd met. But it was very unclear whether that date had actually taken place or who he was, even. There was very little information given. Who had she been talking to online on dating apps? Maybe she met somebody else. That was certainly something that could be unravelled through looking into her mobile phone and computer.
Police decide to try to look into Loreline's last movements to see if they hold any clues.
You look at things like Laureline's finance, so where has she spent money, which indicates that she might have been to a certain place, like a restaurant, which we found out on Friday the 1st, she'd been to a restaurant, and then that venue itself has CCTV.
The CCTV shows Loreline dining with a man, with the pair holding hands. And inquiries with those closest to Loreline soon identifies him.
Laureline was in an on-off relationship for quite a number of years with a man called Kirill Belarusov. And this relationship had been going on for 8+ years, but had kind of fizzled out a couple of years beforehand, but they still saw each other on and off. And so they were aware that Kirill was in the UK as an Estonian national in the UK to come and help her move that weekend.
Police continue to scour CCTV around the area. Both are later seen on bus CCTV, heading in the direction towards Loreline's home in Kew. It seems Kirill may have been one of the last people to see Loreline alive. But when police try to locate him, they find they are too late.
They had discovered that Kirill was actually no longer in the UK. He had flown to Tallinn in Estonia.
Belarusov has left the country.
Police investigating the murder of Loreline Garcia Bateau want to speak to her ex-lover, Kirill Belarusov, as he may have been one of the last people to see her. But police discover that he has left the country.
The CID officers got in contact with Kirill Belarusov via a telephone number they had for him, which was given to them by the family. And they made contact straight away. He behaved like he didn't know what had happened, and the last time he saw her, she was alive.
Kirill tells police he was helping Loreline move on the Saturday, before she left Kew to move to a new address. But when asked further about this last encounter with Loreline, he doesn't give clear answers.
He was being obstructive, in our opinion. He kept avoiding the question. I wanted him back in the country because I wanted to speak to him face to face. But he kept making excuses why he wasn't coming back, or saying, yes, I'm just going to sort it out, and then nothing would happen. He could do everything he could to come back. He was saying he'd be back on one day, that day would go past, we'd ring him and he'd say, I couldn't make it, I'm going to do another day. And this just kept pushing back and pushing back. And you get to a point where you think, well, that's enough. I know he's trying to avoid him coming back.
I think the fact that Belarusov is not keen to help the police in their inquiries, considering that Laureline had been his partner for the best part of 10 years, is extremely suspicious. And the fact that he left the country around the time of her disappearance as well would have raised alarm bells.
Kirill Belarusov soon became the #1 suspect in the inquiry.
But with Kirill refusing to come back, police need to apply for an extradition order.
The police have a fairly complicated process to get someone back from another country. The British police can apply for a European arrest warrant, which is what they did. So they applied to get Belarusov back from Estonia, where he was at the time.
But for the Crown Prosecution Service to agree, the police need to prove they have enough of a case against Kirill.
When you get a European arrest warrant, as this was, when you bring them back into the country, you have no power to interview them. So you have to do everything without asking them a question, which is very, very difficult because you're not giving, firstly, someone the ability to explain, but also you have to reach that threshold of evidence, which means that as soon as they set foot back in this country, you can charge them straight away with the murder.
With police needing to build a firm case against Kirill, they start to dig into his life.
I met Kirill whilst working in a nightclub. It was called Egg, and we started working together, and that's how we met. Kirill was very charming. He was very nice. He was not, arrogant or trying to tell his side of the story. He was always waiting for you to ask a question before bragging or saying anything. Kirill told me about Laureline when we met. He didn't say her name, but he mentioned that he had an ex-girlfriend that he was really in love with, and that they broke up.
But Sabrina recalls how Kirill later spoke in more detail about his and Laureline's relationship and claims she had cheated on him.
He mentioned that he'd had cancer before and that he couldn't have babies anymore, and that one time his ex fell pregnant and she didn't know that he couldn't have babies, and that's how he found out that she cheated, and that's how the relationship ended. He would always say that it was his fault and that she was very caring and that it was hard on her, the fact that he had cancer. So he wasn't blaming her, but he was saying that's how they ended it.
Sabrina remembers the last time she saw Kirill before he left the UK for his home country of Estonia.
The last time I saw Kirill, he told me before that he was going to die, that his cancer was terminal, and that was the last time I was ever going to see him. He said he sold his house, I'm about to die, let's go dinner. And I went to that restaurant crying. I cried most of the night saying, I'm going to lose my friend.
With police still unable to question Kirill to see if his account of his illness is true, they turn to Laureline's finances to try to establish her whereabouts the weekend of her murder.
Through continued interrogation of finances, we see that on Saturday, round about 10:15 in the morning, that there are transactions in Pets at Home and Sainsbury's, all local to where Laureline lived. So again, officers are there as quickly as possible to identify CCTV opportunities. And there you see Kirill Belarusov with Laureline again. So now we know he's with her in the morning.
At a glance, all appears to be fine. But when police look at Laureline's finances a day later on the Sunday, there appears to be no sign of any purchases. Instead, they look into Kirill's finances.
So we start to look at transactions that Kirill might have made as well. And what you could see on Sunday the 3rd of March was Kirill had left premises and had gone to a local retail park, similar to where Laureline and he had been the day before. He'd been to Sainsbury's, been to Homebase, and been to convenience stores through that morning, and was purchasing items which were highly suspicious. They were the rubble sacks that matched the rubble sacks that were found on Laureline's body. He had purchased an axe, which we never found, and he had purchased soil, or compost as it was. And you could see the CCTV of him, identifying him clearly as the person purchasing those items. And so you could say straight away then that it's very, very clear what he was up to. That was now that Laureline had been killed and he was thinking of ways to dispose of her body.
With Kirill's behaviour raising suspicions, police approached the CPS.
We had to go to the Crown Prosecution Service and prove what we had, using all of the information we had: CCTV, finance, witness statements, the crime scene itself, the condition of Laureline's body. And that was something which is very, very difficult, but we were able to prove at that point that we had enough evidence to secure an arrest of Kirill Belarusov. And that gives you the ability to get a European arrest warrant and bring them back. He was brought back on the 20th of March and charged with the murder of Laureline. Kirill Belarusov will go to court the following day, to a magistrate's court, where, because it's murder, they send it to the Crown Court, and then he's due to enter a plea some 8 weeks later. And that plea is not guilty. So we knew at that point we are going to trial with him at some stage in 2019.
And as the case is prepared for trial, potential witnesses are called in by the police and prosecution.
The police called me saying, we want to talk to you about your friend Kirill, and I thought they were calling me to say that he was dead. They told me he's been arrested, he's killed someone. I was in shock. I was like, are you sure that it is the right person? And they said, yes. You don't murder, you don't think that you knew a murderer?
Kirill Belarusov has been charged with the murder of his ex-partner, Loreline Garcia-Bateau. The trial begins at the Old Bailey in London, and the prosecution open their case against Kirill with DNA evidence from the crime scene.
The flex that was used to tie Loreline's hands behind her back, you could see that flex on the floor in the living room where it had been cut. And indeed, the forensic testing showed that Kirill Belarusov's DNA was at the cut part of that flex.
The jury hears of the early relationship between Loreline and Kirill.
At the beginning, she called him my Superman. He's tall, very helpful, especially with women, you know. He came to spend a few days with Loreline at my home. He ate at my parents' table. He was a Superman. A good boy.
And Kirill had even boasted of his career achievements to Loreline.
He had told people he was a stuntman and that he'd worked on films with famous people like Brad Pitt, and that he was training people. We searched in the industries at Hollywood, and we searched in the UK, IMDb, to see where was he in these films, and they're always shown if you work on there. He was nowhere to be found. These were all complete and utter lies that he told everybody.
But the lies did not stop there.
He began to say to lots of people that he was sick and that he had 10 years left to live.
He didn't talk much about his cancer. You would ask him questions and he would say, I'm bleeding from every hole. I've been puking for the last 3 days. I think it's just once where I said, if you don't mind me asking, what is the cancer? Where is it? And he said, oh, it's the pancreas, it's the liver area. And then the time after he would be like, oh, it's spread everywhere. But he would never give any more details. He'd just say, I'm a guinea pig. They've opened me up and stitched me. They keep on opening me up. But he wasn't very specific.
Loreline's mother, friend, and I found it very strange because he has nothing in front of us. When we saw Kirill, a wedding day or for a holiday, we can't imagine he's sick.
I've never known someone who had cancer. So when I saw him with the shaved head, I didn't question it. I didn't think he still had eyebrows. And I didn't know that you lose your eyebrows when you have chemo.
We were suspicious about the lies. It's big lies, you know? We were suspicious. We tell that to Loreline. We explained to her to open her eyes, but she was in love.
And we were discovering that almost all of his entire life that he told people about was a complete lie. Saying you've got cancer when you don't have, for me, is the lowest of the low.
The prosecution also reveals to the court more about Kirill's double life.
Every time he suggested he was going in for treatment to a hospital in London or just outside of London, what he was actually doing was going to stay with another girlfriend in London. That girlfriend also was told the same lie by him, that he had cancer. So when he was not with her and saying that he was away for a few days, he was going to stay with Loreline.
It It's only when I sat down in court that I realized that he was texting the three of us at the same time, his girlfriend, Laureline, and me. So it was really like juggling between the three of us. With me, he was supposed to be in Russia having treatment, and then he was actually in London seeing Laureline, talking to Laureline. I felt like a fool. I felt so stupid. It was so shocking.
The prosecution described that as Laureline's film career began to take off, Kirill may have looked towards her with envy.
He wanted a career in films as well, to a certain extent. He wanted to be a stuntman, but he wasn't, and he couldn't have been because he didn't have the skills to do that. His only skill was lying, whereas she was genuinely talented, and she was very, very hardworking, and she was prepared to earn her place in her chosen career. So I think there probably was an element of jealousy in the relationship.
But it's details of a debt owed to Laureline which could point towards a motive for murder.
She had given him so much money over the course of their relationship, and we knew you were talking plus £17,000 at least at that point. And that was getting to the point where he had to pay that money back. In November 2018, Laureline had sent a message to Kirill, and this was saying, "You don't realise how much in debt, how much in trouble I am. I can't pay my rent. You need to pay me the money back." And from friends and family, we would always hear stories where he would promise this money. It's coming, I've got this job, this stuntman job, whatever it might be, which was all lies. So he knew he could never pay that back. That could be one motive. Secondly, she was at that point in her life now where she was ready to move on, away from him. And she was effectively a source of income for him as well. And that was about to dry up.
To the court's surprise, Kirill gives evidence.
I think the most shocking about the trial was himself. He took the stand and spoke, and it was just, I think it lasted 2 days, and it was 2 days of horror. Every word that was coming out of his mouth was horrible. The way he talked about me, the way he talked about Laureline, the way he saw himself, the arrogance in his voice. I remember sitting down terrified because I had been so close to him and just thinking, that man is a monster. It was traumatizing.
I always think about the people over the years that have been in front of you in a trial, and he's probably right up there as the most evil-looking eyes I think I've ever seen. And because behind it you can see that he really doesn't care. You know, his image and what he's portrayed himself as is more important than anything else. And he was really, really unpleasant and arrogant beyond belief during the entire 4-week trial at the Old Bailey.
The court hears how in March 2019, Laureline begged Kirill one last time to pay back what was owed to her. But instead, he used this opportunity to kill Laureline.
You have the timeline of them going out on the Friday night, which we can see. We have the timeline of them going shopping on Saturday morning. She had booked a removal company ready for Saturday, but she didn't know where she was moving to because Kirill Belarusov had said he has found somewhere for her to move to. She had no money because he owed her a lot of money. She kept asking him, "Where am I going?" And you could see that through telephone contact. "Well, where is this address? I need to tell my removal company where we're going." And so the removal company basically said, "Well, I can't move you to nowhere." So it was all cancelled. Kirill Belarusov comes up with a new lie. He's organised a removal company for her.
But the removal company never came.
And you get to the point then where Laureline is panicking because she doesn't know where she's going, and she's clearly getting to that point in the evening where, on that Saturday, she's starting to disbelieve what he's saying. And that's when everything goes quiet.
It's at this point that Kirill strangled Loreline with a cord. And the following morning, he was seen in local shops purchasing suspicious items.
Kirill had been out and bought these items on the Sunday morning, which were used to cover the body of Loreline.
After returning to Loreline's home to bury her body, Kirill used her phone to send fake texts to Loreline's friends and family to buy some time.
He foolishly used Google Translate to try and reply to the family members in French, and obviously it's not going to sound very credible. It's not going to sound like Loreline, not the words that she would use, and the translation was extremely clunky, so it was immediately quite suspicious.
And at the time that those messages were being sent, he was using the Wi-Fi of the address itself. So that puts him inside the address using her phone. Sickeningly looking at pornography at the same time he's sending these messages, knowing full well that in that house is Loreline's body. And that really shows you what kind of person he is. It's very difficult to comprehend a person who has that kind of personality, that very strange and almost psychotic personality.
By the time concerned family and friends of Loreline get in touch with Kirill about her disappearance, he's leaving the country for Estonia.
I put my phone with video with him. I saw that he was in the airport. So I asked him, "You are in the airport, and your lovely Loreline is missing. Why are you leaving?" He's no explanation, but he leaves.
After a grueling trial at the Old Bailey, the jury returns its verdict. Kirill Belarusov is found guilty of murder and is sentenced to 24 years in prison.
About the verdict, we can't say that we are happy because our friend will never come again. But we are grateful for the jury and the judge to having seen him the real way he is and to not allow him to do that again to another woman.
But even with Loreline's killer behind bars, the impact of his crimes are long-lasting.
Today, we are more mistrusting. Today, when my friend meets a man, I want to know everything. I want to know where she is, the address. It's changed all of our lives.
This entire story definitely had an effect on me. He destroyed so many lives, not just Loreline's. So many people that have been touched by his lies, so many people that believed he was such a nice person. And I think we were all a bit destroyed because we were all fooled and none of us saw anything. And if just one of us saw something, she could still be alive.
Somebody is intentionally trying to kill patients here.
They saw 18 suspicious code blues and up to 9 deaths.
She would talk about the thrill of a code. So we knew we had a problem and we had to start an investigation into it.
They told him, until we can establish cause of death, there isn't a case here. And so our coroner went on a quest.
I said, we're done with this. We're turning this place upside down. You can see us at the courthouse. Chillicothe is a very small rural town, 10,000 people. It's an idyllic town. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and you couldn't ask for a better town to grow up in and to be educated in.
We are about 120 miles from any major metropolitan area, so you're talking about rural Missouri. They call us the home of sliced bread because this is where the first bread slicing machine was created. We're kind of known as the heartland, right in the middle of America. Hedrick Medical Center is a small critical care hospital. These are hospitals that are in underserved area in the rural parts of America, and they're there to take care of the general health of the community, but they're not places where critically acute people are given to. So a lot of times we have nursing home patients who contract pneumonia. They just need a hospital room to administer drugs. And that's probably the common patient in a recovery room.
The population is probably going to be skewed with the elderly, but it's not confined to the elderly. This is a very small hospital. It's a 40-plus bed hospital, so it's very, very small.
Her name was Norma Pearson, and Norma Pearson's blood sugar went to 0 and she coded.
It's a medical emergency. And it's called a code because oftentimes these patients are hooked up to machines and something starts alarming. Something is seriously wrong.
Her organs were shutting down because she had no blood sugar.
And everybody who's available responds to this code. And the number one job of this team is to save this person's life.
Her blood sugars kept fluctuating dramatically. And this person wasn't even a diabetic, and they kept going up and down, and finally, you know, it got into a very grave situation, but he was able to save her life.
Norma Pearson did not die in the hospital. She recovered. And Norma was taken back to a nursing home.
Dr. Cal Greenlaw was a very smart man. He had a degree in pharmacology and came with a lot of experience.
He realized after he filled her with sucralose 2 or 3 times and her blood sugar continued to crash that she had been doped with insulin. And so he went looking for the reason. He thought at first it may just be accidental, that someone had crossed medications. It happens here, but it happens at a very small level, maybe 2 or 3 cases a year. One of our inpatient persons is coding, which is when someone has acute respiratory or circulatory attacks where they can't breathe or their heart isn't working and they need critical intervention. After that, Dr. Greenlaw realized that probably someone was doing it intentionally.
And that's when he came to the conclusion that somebody was juicing the patients.
After Norma coded and recovered, there were several more codes and deaths. And some were not just insulin. There were other drugs that were used.
Dr. Greenlaw becomes very concerned. And he actually goes to administrators at Hedrick's and says, I think that somebody is intentionally trying to kill patients here and may have killed patients here. The hospital say they're going to investigate, but some of the nurses feel like if they say anything, their job could be in jeopardy. And so they become, I think, really concerned.
We had kids that were the same age, and he was the coach of our baseball team. One day at practice, he said, "Hey, look, when practice is over, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Great, what can I help do? What is it?" He said, "Well, I got somebody that's juicing my patients at the hospital," meaning that they were giving them drugs and things that weren't prescribed and causing fatal outcomes or near fatal outcomes. And that's when we knew we had a problem and we had to start an investigation into it.
Jennifer Hall is a respiratory therapist. So a respiratory therapist administers prescribed breathing treatments. They help clearing of lungs, make sure airways are clear, and continue just to serve as patients in their breathing.
Jennifer Hall started in December of 2001. It was almost immediate that people at the hospital started noticing unusual things, such as patients that were in for relatively unrelated causes starting to have very bad symptoms like breathing problems and other issues, things that they did not expect to occur and certainly not at the frequency that was being observed.
Some of the nurses and some of the doctors began to look very closely at Jennifer Hall for a couple of different reasons. She seems to be in close proximity. When all of these codes are occurring, she is almost always the one who alerts other staff members that these codes are happening. And nurses notice that Jennifer seems to have an unusual level of enthusiasm for codes.
Jennifer was known as somebody who wanted to be in the limelight. She liked excitement. She did not like dull days, and she was just eager to be in the middle of the action. Several nurses reported Jennifer telling them statements like, "Oh, don't you just love a code? Isn't it just great?"
She would, enter the work environment and start her shift and make a comment, "Oh, I think tonight we're gonna be really wild. I think we're gonna have some codes."
Those are the kind of comments that really are not appreciated. They're just insensitive comments. Nobody wants to think that there's going to be a code. And oftentimes when Jennifer Hall would make these statements, it seemed to them that there would be a code.
Jennifer Hall liked to pretend that she had a sixth sense. She liked to tell the nurses, "Oh, I think you better keep a look on the patient in room 2. And sure enough, room 2 that night there'd be a code.
But they could not find any evidence to prove that Jennifer Hall was responsible for the code blues that were occurring in the unit at such a high frequency.
She was the only constant figure on that medical chart. She discovered the code. She logged in everything about the code, and it was in her handwriting on the charts, and all of them were the same.
David Wesley Harper was a young man, I think in his 30s, mid-30s.
He came into the hospital suffering from bronchitis. This is an upper respiratory infection.
David Harper was really ready to be discharged, but they wanted to keep him one more night because they thought that he needed some assistance with his breathing when he was sleeping. And so they wanted to do a test to see how he could adjust to this machine he was going to be taking home that would help him after he was discharged.
While he was engaged in the sleep study, he all of a sudden suffers cardiac arrest.
He coded mysteriously and traumatically. The doctors said that when they came and found him, that he was curled up in a position that made them think that his brain had suffered oxygen starvation and had for some time. And so that came from nowhere. He was not even in the hospital for any kind of care. He was there to do a sleep study and died mysteriously.
This was completely unexpected and had nothing to do with either his bronchitis nor his involvement in the sleep study. The records showed that Jennifer Hall was one of the last there with him, and in fact, the last 25 minutes of his life, it was Jennifer Hall who was present.
David Harper's death was a shock to all the doctors.
So here's somebody who's really in the prime of his life, who's been on the mend, and then all of a sudden he dies.
David's death was particularly suspicious because he was a young person. Yes, he smoked, but he wasn't ill. He didn't have any known defects and should have walked out of the hospital the next morning.
I mean, this is a guy that had 3 or 4 kids and he goes in for a sleep apnea study and doesn't go home. Saddest thing in the world.
His death really set the hospital staff looking hard at Jennifer Hall.
During the cleanup of the code, which apparently is a complete mess, there can be things all over the floor because it's an emergency situation, they discover Jennifer Hall's jacket. And when they pick it up, one of the nurses discovers that there is a drug in her pocket.
Succinylcholine is a drug used to intubate people. It paralyzes your throat, or it paralyzes whatever it touches, but it paralyzes your muscles so that you don't gag and reject the intubation process, the tube that goes into your throat for artificial breathing.
Succinylcholine is often used in surgery so they can put in a breathing tube because it's our natural inclination to fight when something is going down our throat. But if you don't have an alternative breathing mechanism in place, you can suffocate.
It's highly dangerous. And if it paralyzes you in your lungs, you cannot take a breath. And so basically, if you die that way, it would be like drowning outside of the water. It would be a terrible way to die. It would feel like you couldn't breathe, almost like strangulation.
It paralyzes you, but you still kind of know what's going on. I mean, you're aware of your surroundings and things like that.
It would be an incredibly horrific and frightening and such a helpless death to know what's going on around you and to want to cry out for help and yet have no ability or no control over your body. It seems like a sadistic way to murder somebody. To find succinylcholine in her pocket. This is significant for a couple of different reasons. Number one is that even though respiratory therapists are able to administer some breathing medications, this is not one of them. So she is not authorized to administer this medication and would have no reason to have it in her possession. And number two, Mr. Harper had never been prescribed succinylcholine. He had never been administered that. So even if she claimed, for example, that I found it on the floor in his room and I picked it up and put it in my pocket, that didn't make any sense because that medication should not have been in that room, period.
After David's death, doctors started watching Jennifer Hall carefully. They had a secret meeting between themselves, and it was determined that Jennifer Hall was even present in places where she really shouldn't have been. She was discovering codes in patients' rooms that she wasn't assigned to be a respiratory therapist. That was highly suspicious, and so the doctors knew they needed to watch her closely. And so anytime there was a code and the crash cart came in, they would make sure that Jennifer didn't have any access to succinylcholine.
Jennifer Ann Hall was born in June of 1980, grew up in the Kansas City area. Her parents, Don and Deborah, were a middle-class family. Deborah was a dental assistant. Don installed fire alarms for a living. She had an older brother. Pretty normal childhood. Her friends at school described her as somebody who was somewhat outgoing, but also somebody who liked to really be the center of attention. Somebody who was always looking for ways to shift the spotlight over to herself. For example, if somebody was getting a lot of attention, she would, at one time, pretend to have a broken ankle or a hurt ankle, so the guys would carry her around.
As she got older, I think she ran into early troubles. According to her family, there was an incident in her childhood where she set a locker on fire and was thrown out of school for doing that.
I would say setting a locker on fire, depending upon the circumstances, is concerning. I mean, it's not something that you see most 8th graders do. It's something that I would expect as a psychologist, you might see somebody maybe in high school with a history of problematic behavior, a history of trauma in the family, those kinds of things. Really a troubled child.
So she had an early extreme behavior that started showing up even before she had graduated high school.
After high school, she decided to become a respiratory therapist.
I think she liked the idea of authority that came from the medical field. She talked about her father like he was a doctor. He wasn't, but she told everybody he was. So she was really interested in the prestige that medicine brings.
She started a respiratory therapist career, I believe, at Cass County Medical Center in Harrisonville, where she got in trouble.
There were ongoing issues with Jennifer Hall. She had lodged a sexual harassment complaint against another employee who denied it completely, and ultimately it was discovered that it did not happen the way that Jennifer Hall claimed.
One day when Jennifer Hall was at work, a fire started at Cass Medical Center in the exact unit that Jennifer Hall was assigned to work in.
The fire is extinguished and the investigators are called out.
Jennifer Hall claimed that she was not inside the building, and in fact, she was outside in her truck getting a soda at the time the fire was set. However, evidence from inside the hospital said otherwise.
The investigators start hypothesizing that this mound of burnt paper was the actual source of the fire. They notice that Jennifer has a burn on her hand. Maybe she burned her hand lighting the fire on a match. She didn't realize the paper would go up in flames so much. And then, kind of oddly enough, Jennifer had gotten a new hairdo the day before. And this later becomes an additional source of evidence. The theory being that Jennifer was going to do this for attention. She was going to start this fire. She was going to be the hero, come in, put out the fire, and look gorgeous for the media.
Jennifer was arrested for the arson at the hospital and was later found guilty at trial.
It's my understanding that Jennifer was sent to prison, and then while she was in prison, the appellate court set aside her conviction for an error at trial.
Jennifer Hall's defense attorney kept mixing up dates and names, and the court actually agreed with her stance when she later appealed. However, the state wanted to make sure that the charges stuck because they didn't want arson at another hospital.
She was released on bond pending a second trial, but then took a job in Livingston County at Hedrick Medical Center. It's my understanding that she did not reveal to anyone that she had a pending case in Cass County. That was probably an oversight by many people.
Colville Gann was our retired conservation agent. He lived here in town. He and my dad were good friends. He was a nice guy. I think he had some cancer issues and things of that nature. But once again, they were getting ready to release him and he was going to go back home. And then they had a code, and of course, he didn't respond to the code. His son, his youngest boy, Dave, was going to go get his dad and take him home the next day. And he ended up not going home. If they're using succinylcholine and insulin because of their short lifespan and they dissipate very quickly, you know, you can't find them at post-mortem when you do the autopsy. It's just, there's nothing there. And that's why they all look like natural cause death.
Jennifer was someone who was intelligent, she read, she liked drugs, she talks about drugs. So for Jennifer to be aware of whether or not succinylcholine can be detected in the body is probably a pretty high likelihood.
Basically, we came up with an idea that we needed more video presence in the hospital where they keep these kind of medications and more video on her so that we could, you know, put the case together and figure out exactly what was going on. And so Cal went to the hospital and they were supposed to have done that. And then a little later on, we went and said, hey, where's the video? We're trying to solve grave crimes here, and we need to move forward in a positive manner in order to get this done. They thought we didn't know what we were talking about and that we were crazy and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, that was farthest from the truth.
They started happening with regularity, something to the tune of 2 or 3 or 4 a week in a hospital that would have 2 or 3 or 4 a year.
We knew we had a problem. When she's there from December to May, I think we have like 18 codes, something like that. And 8 of them result in death. I took all the statistics and went to the Washington University School of Medicine, and I had a doctor, an MD, and he's also have a doctorate in math, and he did the statistical representation of those code facts, and he said it's 1 in a million chance that that could happen if somebody wasn't doing it. Dr. Cal Greenlaw was very frustrated. He knows all this is going on. Well, does he admit your mom to the hospital? Is she sick then? Because who's going to watch her and keep her alive? And so basically, he had to stay at the hospital around the clock when he had patients there to protect them.
Fern Franco was a 75-year-old woman who was in the hospital for pneumonia.
Fern was a resident at the nursing home. She had some infiltrate in her lower left lobe of her lung, and so they sent her to the hospital to clear that up. She was going home the next day, like all of these people. The next day they were going home.
So when she came down with a cardiac arrest and essentially her heart stopped out of the blue, this was something that was so unusual.
Once again, Jennifer Hall was there, participated in her care, and was, you know, somebody who was the first person to go let other nurses know that she was coding.
Her death happened one morning early, like 5 a.m., something like that, and I got the call. I knew that it was a public administrator case. I knew that there wouldn't be any family members out there or anything.
As soon as she passed, the coroner, Scott Lindley, who at this time was incensed about the number of deaths, went immediately to Hedrick Medical Center and collected her body.
I went to the funeral home, and our night embalmer was still there finishing up a prior case, and so he embalmed her like 20 or 30 minutes after she passed away, or within an hour. I got an order from the court. We did a complete autopsy on her and saved all of her tissues.
At the time of Fern Franco's death, it was suspected that the cause of death was succinylcholine poisoning. She had respiratory arrest. Jennifer was suspected of participating in some way, shape, or form, but the mechanism couldn't be proven, and there was no smoking gun where someone saw her inject somebody with a substance. And so without that direct evidence, we have a circumstantial case. In this particular circumstance, we didn't even have a scientifically proven cause of death yet. And that was probably step one in making sure that there was an actionable case. The laboratory testing at the time could not distinguish the difference between naturally occurring succinylcholine that happens at death and synthetic succinylcholine that is used to intubate persons. So back in 2002, there really wasn't a good cause that could be proven medically.
We preserved all the specimens, and I froze them and kept them here in my freezer at the coroner's office. And then I went to the hospital and said, the gig is up, we're done with this, we're turning this place upside down. You know, give us all your stuff or you can see us at the courthouse.
Fern Franco's death really did push Hedricks to take some action. And she was put on leave almost immediately.
Basically, then they started cooperating. They gave us everything we wanted at that point in time, but the horse was already out of the barn and running down the road.
Jennifer Hall is put under an investigation. She was terminated from Hedrick Medical Center. They told our local law enforcement, hey, until we can establish cause of death, there isn't a case here. Local law enforcement closed their books and everyone went away, and no investigation was began.
They thought that they couldn't prove it at trial.
Scott Lindley was not happy, and so neither were lots of the hospital staff. The doctors were not happy, the nurses were not happy. They thought that these patients were poisoned, and they wanted to see something done about that. And our coroner went on a quest.
I earnestly started looking for a laboratory to try and figure out a test available to detect succinylcholine at post-mortem. I started calling all over the country with labs and went everywhere to try to get somebody to actually do or develop a test and so we could clear this case up.
He was looking for a lab, and he eventually found one after about a year's worth of effort.
There was a guy by the name of Dr. Ballard back there, and he was starting to do a test and create a test to find this drug at death using mass spectrometry. So I took those specimens, hand carried them from my locker freezer all the way to Philadelphia and gave them to him to use in his tests to see if we could actually detect succinylcholine. It was successful. And he really did a great job on the investigation.
They were able to use a new method to determine that the heart samples of Fern Franco contained both synthetic succinylcholine and morphine, and she shouldn't have had morphine in her system either.
They said that it couldn't be proven at court, and that was absolutely wrong because we'd already had the test proffered and published. And it was in the New England Journal of Medicine of mass spectrometry.
So Scott Lindley, after being told no by a couple of different prosecutors and investigators, decided to just take it upon himself to open an investigation and do what he called a coroner's inquest. Scott got a pretty famous forensic pathologist named Dr. Bodden to take a look at all his work.
He went through all the cases and determined at that point in time that there's all likelihood that all those 8 cases were homicides. The morning that I went to the courthouse to start on the inquest, I got served by the prosecutor and the sheriff to stop my inquest.
That Scott just put his information and research in a binder and held it on a shelf. I was coming into office in January of 2011. Scott first approached me and said, "Hey, I got this hospital poisoning case. I'd like to show it to you. Will you take a look at it?" And I said, "Well, sure." I would keep an open mind about any kind of alleged poisoning. That's definitely a crime, and I would definitely take a look at it because murder has no statute of limitations.
I showed the case to him, and then he was able to convince the PD to take it and finish it up.
Ultimately, it was the assignment of Brian Schmidt. He actually contacts the profilers that work at the FBI and their persons who come from the Army and other intelligence agencies to sit down and work up a profile of Jennifer Hall. And they do that. I listened to what the profilers say. Now, they didn't come up with motive, but they just say what motivates Jennifer. And you could hear it too in what she tells witnesses. She was motivated by seeming special, that she wanted everyone to think that she was more intelligent than she was. And then she had sort of, on top of it, the fire setter firefighter syndrome, where you light a fire just to go put it out so that you could be in the middle of the action.
She would come to work and talk about the thrill of a code and how she loves them. And that's what she got off on.
We also see this incredible need for attention And so they began to have this kind of savior complex where they almost exhibit a form of Munchausen by proxy, where they are creating these medical emergencies in their patients and then coming in and being the savior. And of course, a certain number of times, they're not going to be able to save that patient.
I tell people it was exciting to see whether or not someone would live or die and to participate in that process. At that point, Brian Schmidt began to really button the case up, to see what witnesses we still had. And also, we lost one of our key witnesses about that time. Dr. Cal Greenlaw, who was the initial person who discovered his patients were being poisoned, he'd passed away from cancer. And we realized that time was of the essence. It's just we had to use whatever resources we had to get what we could done. And he made the effort to do so.
It was because of that great investigative work that the charges against Jennifer Hall were able to be filled.
Through the efforts of the PD and myself, we kind of kept tabs on her, so we did.
People who investigated her looked closely at how she was living her life, really found a life filled with basically chaos, and to some extent, really victimizing other people. There were several restraining orders taken out against her during this period of time.
Jennifer Hall was under indictment for a few cases. One was an allegation that she forged a prescription in Kansas, and then one for stealing from a current significant other in Florida. And then there was an investigation where it was alleged that she was trying to extort a veterinarian in Texas.
They found her hiding out in a motel room there because she knew the arrest was coming. They brought her to Chillicothe for arraignment and placed in jail. To get a murder conviction at trial, that's very difficult when everybody's either can't remember or dead or whatever. It's hard to put that case together.
So her attorney and I start the discussions about plea. A plea in this case was a possibility because a trial had its challenges for the state. And so ultimately, Jennifer Hall pleads guilty to 2 manslaughter charges and 1 assault. The plea agreement was for Jennifer Hall, not me, to pick 3 victims that she specifically remembered poisoning in our hospital, and she did.
She pleads guilty to the first-degree involuntary manslaughter of Corval Gunn, of Fern Franco, and she pleads guilty to the aggravated assault of Norma Pearson.
At sentencing, she was asked to describe what she did, and she agreed to what she did. She just did it in a way that didn't sound like she had any kind of feeling about it, one way or the other. She pled it in a way that she was talking about something that just evoked no emotion, maybe like placing a piece of paper into a file folder. This case affected the community in many ways. The doctors felt terrible. The nurses felt powerless. The families were very disappointed. They felt like no one was listening to them. The hospital had a cloud of suspicion for a while, That was not good for the community. We need our hospital to be trusted by the community. It's under new management now, and it is trusted again, and it's been rebuilt. So those things have all been repaired. But for a time, it was pretty bad out there.
It's a sad issue, but it was finally dealt with. A lot of people in town here that just wanted us to go away. It's nice to know that finally it's validated that Dr. Greenlaw did the right thing.
It really just is unfortunate that I was not able to name every victim and every person who went through these terrible poisonings. But at the end of the day, knowing that Jennifer Hall has, at least in some way, taken responsibility for poisoning patients at our hospital lets me sleep much better at night.